Fabio Wardley and Fraser Clarke. Fraser was here last week. We now know that the rematch has been ordered by the British Boxing Board of Control. I'm interested to see your views because I haven't heard from either one of you about the first fight. So, I mean, I felt that Wardley won the first fight. I don't know what you boys thought and what you thought of the fight and what you think of the rematch.
I hate a draw in boxing, but I almost felt walking away, I didn't mind it being a draw. Yeah, I was like, you know what, yeah. Fair, because I felt we're going to see it again as soon as the referee raised both arms. I like it again. I still feel like Fabio's got room for improvement just because there was no amateur background, a white-collar background. And if he can really dedicate, and I'm talking really dedicate himself to the sport, then I feel like his ceiling just might be higher. I really do believe that than Fraser's, because Fraser's got all the Olympic... Like, that version of a fighter with that Olympic pedigree shouldn't be going toe-to-toe with someone that's never had an amateur background. So that's why I feel like maybe Fabio could get better. But I like it. I do like it. And whoever wins goes on to European fringe world level, but it's a good fight, really good fight.
George, what did you think of the first one?
I think I had Fabio winning, but I also think slightly the other way that Fraser Clarke can come away and improve because he spent so long in that amateur Olympic cycle that amateur boxing, Olympic boxing is very different from pro boxing, and he has the talent to be a very good pro boxer, but he's nowhere near the finished article yet in that respect. His age is a concern, of course, and just the amount of mileage that he would have,
accrued on that fight,
Exactly, and as an amateur,
and sparring.
In the system.
He's been a chief sparring partner for so many good heavyweights.
And overlooked really in some ways, like as a fighter, he's had to take the dent, and he thinks he's going to be number one, and someone's gone in front of him. But I think in terms of becoming a better pro, Clarke can do it. I'd like to see the fight again.
We're gonna.
I'm glad we are. And I think both guys should make improvements. That's not a foregone conclusion.
Who'd you pick?
I'll go first then. I think, I don't know. I've stood next to both guys and they are two big men.
Enormous.
Big men. But there's something about Wardley that just feels like he's a specimen, like he's just an enormous, tough guy. And I think, how'd you beat a guy like that? But Fraser Clarke's got the ability. I'd like to see an improved Fraser Clarke, and if we see that, then I can see him winning.
Nearly as close as the first fight. I'm going to edge to Fabio just with no conviction. I think it's going to be that close, but I think Fabio will just take it. I think it will come down to a fight, and I think Fabio is a fighter as opposed to Fraser is a boxer. So I think if it comes down to a fight, I think Fabio nicks it.
I think Fraser would have learnt a lot from that fight. I picked Fabio in the first fight. And I've got a feeling that I'm going to change my mind because I think Fraser has the ability to grow from the first fight. And I think that Fabio had his opportunity to get Fraser out there and didn't take it. When you look at those two boys, and we've discussed the landscape of the heavyweight boxing in another segment, but how far can either one of these go? The victor goes where and to what end?
The benefit that both might have, and I know Fraser's a bit older than Fabio, is that you look at the top table of heavyweight boxing and they're all quite old. So if you're Fabio, you can put your feet up really for 18 months and they all could fight each other and then they all vanish. I think Fury won't be here in 18 months. Usyk won't be here in 18 months. I'm not convinced AJ will be either. So
are they at a Dubois level though? Can they get to a Dubois level? Because that's what you're talking about being left with, aren't you?
Yeah, a Dubois and Anderson, those type of guys that will be there. Moses Tatoma will definitely be in that mix as well. I think they can get there. I think they can. It's not easy, but I think they can. Look, who would have thought Dubois would have been here where he is a couple of years ago? So they certainly can get there, but it's going to be tough.
Well, I think everyone thought that Dubois was going to be there a few years ago up until he came up against Joe Joyce. I remember reading an article that Jeff Powell wrote in the newspaper about forget Fury, forget Joshua, Triple D is the guy that's coming through. So, I mean, I think that ultimately Dubois was tipped to be at this level anyway, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And Moses Tatuma. By the way, where's Dillian Whyte?
Wanting to get in the mix, is desperate to get in the mix as well. I know he sat down with Eddie Hearn at a fight recently, I can't remember the fight. He's desperate to get back in there. You mentioned what could Joseph Parker do next. It's a step back for Joseph Parker, fighting Dillian Whyte, but they had that fight. Dillian Whyte's got a victory over him. It's a fight that will sell. Dillian Whyte will be crazy in the presser.
It's a pisser though for Joe Parker to take that fight again, though, isn't it?
It is.
But is Joseph Parker the winner of Wardley Clarke? Is that, and again, that's a step down for him in many ways, but that's an interesting fight, I think, and and definitely a bridging fight for. Well, it's a massive step up for the winner of Wardley Clarke.
Chris Eubank Jr. has been flapping his gums this week. Obviously, I think it's universally known that he's signed with Ben.
Yep.
And he's talked about this hit list over the next 12 months of Ben, Saunders, Canelo, Crawford and Lara. Now, we've heard this kind of speak before. George, you fought him. I like him as an entertainer. I think he's box office in lots of ways. But I've been critical about him, I've been critical to his father, about the fact that we don't see you fighting for world titles. And when you do fight a fighter that's at that level, i.e. you get your backside handed to you. Chris Eubank Jr.
Yeah, my fight with him was in 2018.
Wow.
Like 6 years ago now. And I think, well, it feels like a long time. It doesn't really feel like a long time, but it is a long time ago. And what has he done since? Nothing. Yeah, I don't think he's had a world title fight since. He is, and I'm not exactly sure why, but he's the box office name. That's why he's signed with Sky. Sky are looking for pay-per-view
Because he's charismatic,
fights.
George. He is charismatic.
Yeah, but he'll say, I'm going to fillet a steak, and that's headlines and everyone's going to read it, you know. But if Liam Smith said it, it's the same words. It's not going to make any difference, is it? You know. So he is for whatever reason we've decided, his legacy, his name, his personality can't be his ability, but he's pay-per-view. And again, we've got the hit list, but we're confident of seeing any of them fights.
It's a strange hit list as well. So Billy Joe Saunders, who hasn't fought since he lost to Canelo, so that's not happening.
Who said he was going to fight at light heavy, by the way.
Yeah, Billy Joe's massive. I don't think he can even make light heavy at the moment. With the Conor Benn situation, we have no idea what's going to happen. Canelo, look, he was in discussions. That was legit discussions to fight Canelo in September. I don't know, man. I love Eubank just because he is a character. You either like him or you hate him. You're going to tune in to watch him. And I thought he's coming off his best performance of his career against Liam Smith.
Sure.
I thought he looked really good, and then he sat out for a year. So again, that's the problems. I mean, you come off a good performance. Let's do something. Let's build on that. And he hasn't fought since.
When you fought him, George, I mean, obviously, it took you a number of attempts to get a world title, and I'm really glad that you got one because I thought you thoroughly deserved one. Did you think that Eubank Jr. Would go on to win a world title?
Yeah, well, he at the time, so he was a lot fresher than he is now. 6 years ago, he had a lot of momentum behind him. His dad was talking. Doing a great sales pitch, and he was putting together some decent performances, maybe slightly flattering, but he was a favourite going into our fight. I remember that, and being shocked, but also not. That's how he was being portrayed, and I thought he had world-class, like a world-class engine. Mm-hmm. So he could, throw a high volume of shots. He had good hand speed. He's physically very strong, not like a one-punch power knockout artist, doesn't have equalizer power, but definitely to be respected. And the boxing ability, because of the schooling that he had, was never going to be at the top level, but he was a very good, well-rounded pro. I thought he would win a world title one day.
You did.
But then, it comes down to desire. Like, it comes down to desire. And maybe in some ways he's just, the desire to win a world title would never quite be the same as everyone else because his profile is so big, because he can always be the A side. He can pick easy fights. He can do a Canelo and pick his fighters, but he's never won a world title. But because of his name and his status, and to be honest, the way the boxing scene is here in the UK right now, he can go to a boxer at Sky and get pay-per-view fights, like the 2 pay-per-view fights he had against Liam Smith. No world title on the line. I'm not sure what the numbers were, but he was good enough to do it again. And they were good enough for him to sign, and they'll be looking to do more again in the future. I think he's waiting around for a Conor Benn fight, which I don't know the ins and outs of that situation, but it seems like that's never going to happen. But there must be a strong enough possibility for both them guys to not go in a different direction where it feels like they're waiting to fight each other.
Do you think his father, I mean, I spent a lot of time with Eubank Sr., who is a riddle wrapped up in a rhyme, isn't he, at times? But do you think his father helped or hindered his career? Because whenever you talk to Eubank Sr., it's about him first and his son second, even when he's describing his son. So when you look at that relationship, that that started with great success and then has obviously broken up, and they're no longer working together, and hopefully they'll get their relationship back together. The question is, do you think that his father was of more benefit to him than a disadvantage that he now has by not having him?
It depends what his dreams were at the start. Like I look at Eubank Jr. and I almost feel like this is someone that is in full control, whether you like it or not, full control of what he's doing. I think boxing is such a dangerous sport, and I've always said, get in, get rich, and get out. And George just mentioned the fact that this is a guy that, in terms of ability, he's not the best, but he's had 2 pay-per-view fights. He's made a lot of money. He's come back. Everyone wants his signature.
Yep.
We're all going to tune in for his fights regardless of who he's fighting. And he just seems to be so assured of himself. And I think that's from his dad, who's seen the sport inside out, knows how awful the sport can be, knows the snakes in the sport as well. And I think he's guided him from young with that. I think there could have been a lot more. I think he could have gone on to win a world title, but I don't think he cares. I just think he cares about making money, playing poker. When that money runs out, come back to boxing, make a few more million, and go back and play poker. I think he's done so well at the sport, because I actually don't think the talent was there to really compete with the very best. I think we saw it against George, and we saw it against Billy Joe. But I do think his dad's been more of a help than a hindrance.